In the not-too-distant future, mankind has reached incredible new heights in technology and medicine. The general public celebrated those accomplishments and the scientists who made them possible. But people were still unaware of the dangers hidden in their achievements. Somewhere around Texas, there was a secret research lab known only to a few high-ranking officials and scientists. This lab was a place where some of the most cutting-edge and controversial experiments happened. The brightest minds were put there with a single goal: to create super soldiers with genetic engineering. This very ambitious initiative was called Project Origins. The goal was to produce beings with unmatched strength and intelligence, capable of withstanding the toughest conditions and performing tasks beyond the abilities of any human. The scientists working on the project believed they were on the brink of a breakthrough that would change the future of warfare and science forever. They started with the DNA of different animals, combining the strength of animals with the intelligence and adaptability of humans. The experiments were long and complex, but every single one of them failed in the beginning. The doctors were really confused and upset by that, but then the leading scientist of the Project Origins got an idea. Her name was Dr. Sierra Carter, and she was a geneticist with 15 years of experience in her field. She proposed that it would be best if they combined the DNA of a human with the DNA of a gorilla. Since gorillas are one of our closest relatives and also are very strong and capable animals, they would be the perfect match for our project. Other scientists agreed with Dr. Carter and began synthesizing human DNA with the DNA of a gorilla. The lab was overrun with doctors working day and night to perfect their creation. Because the whole process required unprecedented precision and control, doctors had to work in shifts in order to complete the project. The team used cutting-edge technology to combine and put human genes associated with intelligence, problem-solving, and emotional complexity into the gorilla genome. This process involved countless experiments and failures. Many early attempts resulted in unstable hybrids that couldn't survive or showed uncontrollable behaviors. But the scientists didn't give up. They continued to refine their techniques, learning from each failure. They developed advanced nanotechnology to support the genetic modifications, ensuring that the new genes integrated flawlessly with the existing DNA. This also allowed them to make adjustments in real time, correcting any issues as quickly as they appeared. After years of hard work, the team finally achieved a breakthrough. A viable embryo was created, combining the raw physical power of a gorilla with the cognitive abilities of a human. This embryo was nurtured in a specially designed artificial womb, providing the perfect environment for it to grow and develop. As the embryo grew, the scientists monitored its progress closely. They used advanced imaging and diagnostic tools to track its development, ensuring that it was growing as expected. They were thrilled to see that their creation was not only surviving, but thriving. And then, when the time came, the hybrid was finally born. From the moment he took his first breath, it was clear that he was something extraordinary. He looked like a normal baby gorilla, but it was obvious that he was so much greater than a regular ape. They named him Tank. He grew rapidly, reaching the size of a full-grown gorilla within a matter of months, and then surpassing it. His physical development was matched by his cognitive growth. He quickly learned to understand human speech and could solve complex puzzles designed to test his intelligence. But sadly, Tank couldn't talk. Scientists didn't give him vocal cords capable enough for a normal speech. Because they thought that a soldier shouldn't speak his own mind, he only has to obey commands and carry out his orders. That's why Tank could only grunt and growl like a normal gorilla, even though he had a mind as intelligent as an average human. Realizing the potential of their creation, the scientists began a rigorous training and conditioning program. They wanted to control and direct Tank's abilities by teaching him to follow commands and use his strength for military purposes. They used a combination of positive reinforcement and advanced neural conditioning to shape his behavior. Tank's training included physical exercises that were made to increase his strength and agility, as well as cognitive tasks to increase his problem-solving skills. They were amazed at his progress. He was only a couple of months old, but he could lift weights that no human could even dream of lifting. He could also jump great distances and perform feats of agility that were impossible for any other creature of his size. However, as Tank grew, so did his awareness of his situation. He began to show signs of frustration and resentment towards his confinement and the constant tests. His intelligence made him acutely aware of his captivity and the control the doctors had over him. The doctors also noticed these changes, but underestimated their significance. They believed their mental conditioning would be enough to keep him in check. The warning signs became more evident when Tank started to resist his training. He would refuse to perform certain tasks and became increasingly agitated during testing. The scientists attributed this to typical growing pains, not realizing that Tank's intelligence allowed him to understand his situation far more deeply than they expected. One day, when they were doing a regular health check on him, a scientist made a stupid mistake by giving him an extra dose of the growth hormone that was made to accelerate his growth. It was more than 5 times his regular dosage. The scientist didn't notice that at first, so he proceeded with Tank's regular training. Tank's usual mild temperament was getting worse with every passing minute. As the training continued, his agitation turned into anger. He started ripping all of the devices that were put on him to measure his body's parameters. Doctors tried to calm him down by talking to him in a soft voice and playing slow and peaceful music. But that made him even more angry. Then security was called down into the lab to try and subdue him. They shot him with tranquilizer darts made specifically for him, but his skin grew so thick in the meantime that they just bounced off of him. And shooting him just made him go from anger into a full-blown rage. He started by ripping apart all the equipment around the lab with ease. Every single person that was in the lab quickly went outside and locked Tank inside the room. The scientists watched in horror as he turned his anger on the reinforced glass that separated him and the other people. That glass was made strong enough to withstand punches from him. But the growth hormone started kicking in, and he was getting stronger with every passing minute. He was punching the glass repeatedly, blow after blow. Dr. Sierra Carter was reassuring people herself that the glass was strong enough to hold him and that they shouldn't worry. But as soon as she said that, a small crack appeared on the glass, and everyone went into panic mode. Alarms started blaring, and people went running for the exit, but Dr. Carter just stood there motionless, saying, "My God, what have we created?" The crack on the glass was getting bigger with every single punch, until finally it gave in and shattered completely. The raging gorilla broke free. Now security drew their real weapons and began shooting at him. A couple of bullets grazed him, but one actually pierced his arm. He was now in pain, which made him panic. He started jumping all around the building, searching for the exit, while the security continued shooting at him. And finally, he found the main door leading to the front yard. He rushed to the door and broke through them. He then jumped the fence that was put around the facility and ran away from the people. The scientists could only watch helplessly as their creation, a gorilla of massive strength and size, broke free into the world. Tank was no longer a controlled experiment. He was a living, breathing force of nature, and humanity was unprepared for the consequences of their ambitions. Dr. Carter's assistant rushed over to her to see if she was okay. His name was James. He pulled her off the ground and asked her if she was hurt. "I'm fine, but what are we going to do?" Dr. Carter asked. "We have to warn the authorities," James responded. Sierra nodded, while her heart was racing. "If we can't contain Tank, millions will die." They entered a jeep alongside the head of security and rushed with him to the closest military base. In the meantime, Tank was running all around the area. Confused and very much hurt, he didn't know where he should go. Until he saw a nearby farm in the neighborhood, he immediately headed straight to it. When he got to the farm, he snuck and hid in a barn. When he was resting and licking his wounds, he started feeling immense and insatiable hunger. It was the growth hormone acting on his body, asking for fuel. Tank looked around to see if there was something to eat, but there was only a bunch of animals. He wasn't used to eating meat, but his hunger was so painful that he immediately grabbed a sheep and began eating her. With every bite he took, growth hormone made him larger and also healed his wounds. That's why he was still hungry, even though he just ate a whole sheep. He started looking for more animals. There were a bunch of sheep and cows in the barn with him. He started devouring them, one by one. And with every animal he ate, he was getting bigger and bigger. But his brain couldn't handle that many hormones. He was losing his capacity for thinking. Every time that he grew bigger, his brain was getting smaller. His animal instincts started kicking in, and he was becoming more of a beast than a thinking creature. He devoured every single animal that was there. After eating, his body grew to the size of a house and then broke through the barn. His eyes changed too. They became red. But his hunger was still tormenting him. His sense of smell became better too, and he smelled more animals in another farm 2 miles from there. He instantly rushed to that farm. He got there fast, and as soon as he came in, he began eating every single animal there. And again, with every animal that he ate, his size grew larger, but his intellect was getting lower. When he finished the last animal on that farm, he finally felt a little bit of relief. His hunger wasn't tormenting him anymore, and the growth hormone he had in his system was almost gone. He grew so much that he was now as big as a small building, but he lost what was the most precious to him, his mind. Tank was now a wild beast with almost no thinking ability, just pure instinct. He became an apex predator. Now James and Dr. Carter arrived at the military base. They explained everything that happened to the military leaders. She said that they must act now, or millions of people are gonna die. General Marcus immediately called all of his troops and ordered them to get out and start their search for a huge gorilla. "When you find him, neutralize him on sight," the general said to his troops. Tank heard a lot of noise coming from the city. It annoyed him, so he left the farm and went to the city center. As he was marching down the center, as big as a building, people were terrified. They were running away from him while he was crushing everything in his path. Building, cars, truck, you name it. It was all reduced to rubble. That's when James and Dr. Carter arrived at his destination, alongside General Marcus. When they saw him, they couldn't believe their own eyes. "Oh my God, he grew even larger!" James screamed. "This is insane. He changed into a wild beast," Sierra replied. General Marcus looked at them and said, "Snap out of it. We need to act fast, or we're all dead." Then he turned to his officers. "Deploy all available units. We need to slow him down until we can figure out a way to neutralize him." The streets turned into a battlefield as soldiers and armored vehicles set up defensive positions. Fighter jets roared overhead, ready to strike. The giant gorilla approached the city limits, his eyes burning with rage. "Fire at will," General Marcus commanded through his radio. Armored tanks fired their cannons, and soldiers unleashed a barrage of bullets. Missiles launched from the fighter jets, zeroing in on the gorilla. Everything was burning all around, but Tank barely flinched. His thick skin absorbed all the weapons fired at him. He then roared at them and charged forward, destroying all of the military vehicles on his path. Sierra and James stood with the command team, watching the carnage unfold on the monitors. "This isn't working," James said fearfully. "He is unstoppable," Dr. Carter added. General Marcus frowned. "We need to devise another plan, Doctor. Lives are at stake." "Wait," said Dr. Carter. "His body might be indestructible, but his brain works on electricity, just like any other. If we can find a way to disrupt electricity in his brain, we will make him unconscious, that way rendering him incapable of doing anything." "Brilliant," said General Marcus. "I have exactly what you need to do that." He turned to his troops and yelled, "Bring me that EMP device we have for shutting off electricity." Yes, General Officer nodded. A specialized EMP device was brought to the general. This device was the only hope that they had left for killing the beast, but it had to be put directly on his head in order to work. They then started thinking about the ways they could do that without getting killed in the process. James had an idea. What if we put this device into a big gun with compressed air, just like the tranquilizer darts? And then with a helicopter get close to him, so that someone can shoot the gun and land the EMP device on his head. "Great idea," said the general. "I'll call my men in the helicopter and put the EMP device inside, along with the gun, to shoot it with." "I'll go," Dr. Carter volunteered. "This is my responsibility, and I know how to use a gun." "No," James said. "We go together." The helicopter came in, and they both climbed in, along with the gun and the EMP device. The pilot flew the aircraft right next to the gorilla, while he was busy destroying the city. The helicopter hovered above him, while the doctor was preparing to descend. "Lower me down," she instructed. The gun was strapped to her back with the EMP device inside it. She came close to him on a rope, but he didn't notice her, because he was distracted with the military shooting at him. Sierra took the gun out of her back and aimed it at his head. She then calmed herself, breathed in and out, and then pulled the trigger. The shot was successful, and the EMP device landed exactly on his head. "Now, James," she yelled at her communication device, "pull me up and turn on the EMP." They pulled her back to the helicopter, and then James triggered the device. A pulse of energy surged, and the beast screamed in agony, and then fell to the ground motionless, with his brain fried. Tank was dead, and his terror was finally over.